The great chamber of Valora Prime was silent. 12 species had gathered here today, sitting in their carved seats of stone and metal, each one representing billions of lives across the galaxy. The ceiling rose so high that clouds formed near the top, and light came from crystals that floated in the air like frozen stars. Admiral Una Park stood alone in the center of the floor. She was 52 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and a face that showed nothing. Behind her stood Captain Jiho Han and Dr. Minho Beck, both in their formal uniforms, both watching the alien faces above them with careful eyes. 80 years. That was how long humanity had worked for this moment. 80 years of trade, of sharing technology, of sending doctors to dying worlds and engineers to broken stations. 80 years of proving that humans were worthy of joining the Galactic Concord. The High Speaker of the Council, a tall being made of living crystal, raised one shimmering arm. "The vote has been cast," it said, its voice like wind through glass. "On the matter of Earth's application for full membership in the Galactic Concord, the results are as follows." Una kept her hands folded behind her back. Her heart was steady. She had prepared for every outcome. 7 against, 4 in favor, 1 abstention. The words hung in the air. Somewhere in the gallery, a Keldari representative made a sound that might have been laughter. The reptilian species had never hidden their hatred for humanity. They saw humans as vermin, breeding too fast, spreading too far, asking too many questions. But the High Speaker was not finished. "Furthermore," it continued, "the Council has determined that humanity represents a potential threat to galactic stability. Effective immediately, Earth is classified as a contained species. All human vessels are ordered to return to the Sol system. No human ship may travel beyond the boundary of Neptune's orbit. Trade agreements are suspended. Diplomatic relations are frozen." Dr. Minho closed his eyes. Captain Jiho's jaw tightened until the muscles stood out like rope. But Una did not move. She did not blink. The Velith ambassador, an insectoid creature with 6 arms and eyes like black mirrors, leaned forward in its seat. "Does the human representative wish to speak?" Every eye in the chamber turned to Una. The Keldari were grinning with their needle teeth. The Velith were clicking their mandibles in anticipation. They expected begging. They expected threats. They expected the famous human emotion to finally break through. Una looked up at them. She let the silence stretch for 5 seconds. 10. 20. Then she simply nodded once, turned, and walked toward the exit. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. This was not how defeated species behaved. They screamed. They pleaded. They made promises they could not keep. But this human woman simply walked away, as if the judgment meant nothing. "Admiral Park," the High Speaker called. "Do you understand the terms of containment? Your species will be confined to your home system indefinitely. You will have no voice in galactic affairs. You will be alone." Una stopped at the door. She turned her head slightly, just enough to show her profile. "We understand," she said. Her voice was soft, but somehow it carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "We understand perfectly." Then she was gone. Captain Jiho and Dr. Minho followed her through the winding corridors of Valora Prime. Neither spoke. They knew better than to ask questions when Una wore that particular expression. They had served with her for 15 years. They had seen that look only once before, right before she destroyed a pirate fleet that had taken human colonists as slaves. When they reached their shuttle, Una finally stopped. She stood at the window, looking out at the stars. "Admiral," Jiho said quietly. "What are your orders?" Una was silent for a long moment. Then she pulled out her communication device and typed a single word. She transmitted it on the highest security channel, aimed directly at Earth Command, encrypted with codes that would take the Council 10,000 years to break. The word was, "Unchained." She put the device away and turned to face her officers. "We go home," she said. "And then we show them what happens when you cage a species that spent its entire existence learning how to break free." Minho swallowed hard. "The Council has 400 years of technology ahead of us. They have thousands of worlds, Trillions of soldiers, resources we cannot imagine. Yuna smiled. It was not a warm smile. They have numbers, she agreed. They have history. They have power. But they do not have what we have. And what is that? Jiho asked. Yuna looked back at the stars, toward the distant point of light that was Seoul. They have never been hungry, she said. They have never been hunted. They evolved on peaceful worlds with plenty of food and gentle climates. They have never known what it means to fight for survival against everything around you. She paused. Humanity did not become the dominant species of Earth by being peaceful. We did not survive ice ages and plagues and predators by giving up when things seemed impossible. We are the children of survivors. Every human alive today is descended from ancestors who refused to die when the universe demanded it. The shuttle's engines began to hum as the pilot prepared for departure. The Council thinks they have contained us, Yuna continued. They think we will sit in our little solar system and slowly fade away. They think we will beg them to reconsider in 10 years, or 20, or 50. She turned to face Jiho and Minho, and now her eyes were bright with something fierce and cold. They will learn the truth soon enough. Humanity does not beg. Humanity does not fade. And humanity does not forgive those who try to put chains on our future. The shuttle lifted off, carrying them away from Valora Prime, away from the Council that had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. In the chamber behind them, the alien representatives were already celebrating. The human problem was solved. The fast-breeding, curious, dangerous little species from the third planet of an unremarkable star would trouble them no more. They had no idea that in bunkers beneath the mountains of Earth, in hidden stations in the asteroid belt, in laboratories that officially did not exist, humanity had been preparing for this day for half a century. Project Horizon was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months passed after the vote, and the galaxy watched Earth with growing confusion. The humans did exactly what they were told. Every trading vessel returned to Seoul. Every diplomat came home. Every scientist, every merchant, every tourist, every explorer, all of them packed their bags and flew back to their little solar system like obedient children. The Keldari laughed about it in their war halls. They had expected resistance, perhaps even a small rebellion that they could crush to prove their superiority. Instead, they got silence. Complete, total, unnerving silence. No angry messages, no desperate pleas, no attempts to negotiate. Earth simply closed its doors and went quiet. On the Velith homeworld, the ruling council congratulated themselves on handling the human problem so elegantly. They are broken, the High Matriarch declared. They know their place now, but deep beneath the surface of Earth, in a bunker that no satellite could detect, General Taeho Shin was addressing the United Council of Nations. He was 61 years old, with a shaved head and scars on his hands from wars fought long before humanity ever looked to the stars. He had commanded armies on 3 continents. He had never lost a campaign, and now he was about to command something far greater than any army in human history. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice calm and steady. Project Horizon is now active. The leaders of every nation on Earth sat before him. Presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, and kings. All of them had put aside their differences the moment the containment order arrived. For the first time in human history, there was no division. There was only Earth. For 50 years, we have prepared for this possibility, Taeho continued. We always knew that the galaxy might reject us. We always knew that our kindness might be seen as weakness. So, while we offered friendship with one hand, we built our future with the other. He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed the solar system, but not as any public map depicted it, hidden in the asteroid belt, invisible behind Jupiter, nestled in the shadows of Saturn's rings, were thousands of red dots. 3,000 warships, Taeho said. Each one equipped with technology that the Council has never seen. Each one crewed by officers who have trained for this moment their entire lives. A murmur went through the room. Even those who knew about Project Horizon had not known its true scale. But that is not all. The display changed, showing blueprints and technical specifications that made even the scientists in the room gasp. For 80 years, we traded with the galaxy. We accepted their technology. We studied it. And we improved it. Engineer Sujin Lim stepped forward. She was 34 years old, with tired eyes and ink stains on her fingers from working 18-hour days for the past decade. She was the architect of Project Horizon, the genius who had turned humanity's desperate hope into reality. The Council believes their FTL drives are the fastest in the galaxy, she said. Ours are 3 times faster. They believe their shields are unbreakable. We can cut through them like paper. Their weapons fire energy beams that travel at the speed of light. Our weapons fire projectiles that arrive before the light does. She paused to let that sink in. We did not just copy their technology, she continued. We asked questions they never thought to ask. We saw possibilities they never imagined. That is what humans do. That is what we have always done. We take what exists, and we make it better. General Tejo nodded. The Council made 2 mistakes. First, they underestimated us. Second, they gave us 80 years to prepare. Now, they will pay for both. The next morning, Admiral Yuna Park transmitted a final message to the Council. It was polite and formal. It thanked them for the years of cooperation. It expressed hope that future relations might improve. It said nothing that could be interpreted as a threat. The Council barely noticed. Just another sign that humanity had accepted its defeat. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, Captain Jiho Han stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned flagship, the Unbroken. It was a monster of a ship, 2 kilometers long, covered in weapons that the galaxy had never seen. Around it floated 3,000 similar vessels, all of them dark, all of them silent, all of them waiting. Lieutenant Hana Choi stood beside him. She was 29 years old, with sharp eyes and a tongue even sharper. She had grown up on a colony world, had watched the Council's peacekeeping forces stand by while pirates raided her home. She had no love for the alien powers that ruled the galaxy. How long do we wait? She asked. Until they give us a reason, Jiho replied. He did not have to wait long. 2 weeks later, Keldari scout ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. They had been sent to monitor Earth's containment, to make sure the humans remained properly caged. They scanned the system thoroughly. They found nothing unusual. Earth's few visible ships were old trading vessels, barely armed. The military stations were small and outdated. The defensive platforms were laughable compared to Keldari standards. The humans are compliant, the scouts reported. They are broken and defeated. They pose no threat. The scouts left, satisfied that humanity was exactly where it belonged. They never detected the 3,000 warships hiding in the shadows, their engines cold, their crews patient, their weapons ready. Back on Earth, General Tejo received the scout report that his intelligence officers had intercepted. They see what we want them to see, he said. They believe what they want to believe. They believe what they want to believe. He turned to look at a map of the galaxy on his wall. So many worlds, so many species, so many of them had cheered when humanity was caged. Soon, he said softly. Very soon, they will learn the truth. He thought about the history of his species, the wars, the plagues, the disasters, the ice ages that had nearly wiped out early humans, the predators that had hunted them in the dark, the countless enemies, natural and otherwise, that humanity had faced and overcome. The galaxy thought it had seen everything. It had studied thousands of species across millions of years. It believed it understood the nature of intelligent life, but it had never met anything like humanity. It had never met a species born on a death world, and it was about to learn why that mattered. The Valith colony of Serath IV was not an important world. It was a mining outpost at the edge of Valith space, home to perhaps 1 million workers and a small military garrison. Its only purpose was to extract rare metals from the mountains and ship them back to the homeworld. But it had one other distinction. For the past 2 months, Velith raiders operating from Serath IV had been attacking independent human trading outposts beyond Earth's borders, small stations that had been built before the containment order, now left defenseless and alone. The Velith saw easy prey. The humans had no protection anymore. No council backing. No allied fleets. Nothing. So the raiders struck again and again, taking goods, taking prisoners, taking whatever they wanted. They thought no one would stop them. They were wrong. Commodore Junho Quan sat in the command chair of his vessel, the Silent Thunder, watching Sereth 4 grow larger in the viewport. Around him, 40 warships held formation, all of them running dark, all of them invisible to every sensor the Velith possessed. He was 44 years old, a career officer who had spent 20 years preparing for exactly this moment. He had studied every battle the Velith had ever fought. He knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their fears. Time to arrival? He asked. 90 seconds, his navigation officer replied. Junho nodded. All ships, prepare for synchronized emergence. Remember your targets. Remember your training. And remember why we are here. On the bridge of the Silent Thunder, Specialist Minji Yu was finalizing her broadcast. She was 31 years old, an expert in communications and psychological operations. Her job was not to fire weapons. Her job was to send a message that the entire galaxy would hear. Broadcast ready, she reported. Hold until my command, Junho said. The countdown reached 0. 40 human warships dropped out of FTL directly above Sereth 4, appearing from empty space like ghosts stepping out of shadows. The Velith defense grid detected them instantly. Alarms screamed across the colony. Garrison commanders shouted orders. Weapons platforms powered up, preparing to destroy the impossible invaders. They never got the chance. The human ships did not attack with the energy beams that the galaxy used. They fired something else entirely. Small, incredibly fast projectiles that struck with perfect accuracy, not at the colony itself, but at every military installation, every weapons platform, every defensive satellite. 90 seconds. That was all it took. In 90 seconds, Sereth 4's entire defense grid went offline. Weapons platforms drifted dead in space. Garrison command centers went dark. Military communication channels filled with static, and not a single civilian was harmed. Not one mining facility was damaged. Not one worker was injured. The Velith had never seen anything like it. Their enemies had always used brute force, destroying everything in their path to achieve victory. But these humans had struck with surgical precision, removing every threat while leaving everything else untouched. It was terrifying. Commodore Junho opened a channel to the garrison commander. This is Commodore Junho Quan of the Earth Defense Force, he said, his voice calm and polite. Your military assets have been neutralized. Your civilian population is unharmed. You have 1 hour to evacuate all military personnel from the surface. Any attempt to restore weapons systems will be met with immediate response. The garrison commander, a Velith general with decades of experience, could barely form words. You cannot do this, he finally managed. You are a contained species. The council is not here, Junho interrupted, still perfectly polite. We are. He cut the channel and turned to Minji. Send the broadcast. Minji activated her equipment. Her message went out on every channel, every frequency, every communication system in Velith space. It was designed to reach not just the military, but every civilian, every merchant, every traveler. The entire Velith Dominion would hear it. People of the Velith Dominion, her recorded voice began. 6 months ago, your representatives voted to contain humanity. Since then, raiders from your territory have attacked our people, stolen our goods, and taken our citizens as prisoners. She paused. Earth remembers those who voted against us. Earth also remembers those who simply watched while we were attacked. This demonstration is your only warning. Return our people. Cease all hostile actions, or the next visit will not be so gentle. The message repeated on a loop as the human fleet maintained position above Sereth 4. Exactly 1 hour later, Velith military shuttles began launching from the surface, carrying garrison troops to emergency evacuation ships. They knew they had no choice. Their weapons were dead. Their defenses were gone. They were completely at the mercy of the human fleet, but the humans did not attack them. They simply watched, silent and patient. As the Velith military fled, when the last shuttle was gone, Commodore Junho gave one final order. All ships, prepare for FTL. Take us home. The human fleet vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Sereth 4 intact but defenseless, its million civilians unharmed but utterly shaken. Within hours, the Galactic Council convened in emergency session. Representatives shouted at each other in a dozen languages. The Keldari demanded immediate retaliation. The Velith demanded council protection. Others demanded to know how humans had developed such advanced technology without anyone noticing. In the middle of the chaos, a holographic image appeared at the center of the chamber. It was Admiral Una Park, uninvited but impossible to ignore. "You voted to contain us," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade through silk. "You thought you could cage us in our little solar system and forget we existed." She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who held all the cards and knew it. "You cannot contain what you do not understand. And you clearly do not understand humanity at all." The High Speaker tried to respond, tried to issue threats and demands, but Una simply continued. "We did not harm your civilians. We did not destroy your property. We only demonstrated what we are capable of. Consider this a lesson. The next lesson will be more expensive." Her image flickered and disappeared. The council chamber fell silent. For the first time in 400 years, the great powers of the galaxy felt something they had almost forgotten: fear. The Keldari Emperor was not a patient creature. He had ruled his species for 60 years through strength and terror, and he had never once shown weakness. So when the reports from Serath 4 reached his throne room, he did not hesitate. "Assemble the Grand Fleet," he commanded. "Every capital ship, every carrier, every destroyer. We will burn Earth to ash and scatter the ashes across the void." His advisors tried to counsel caution. The human technology was unknown. The attack on the Velith had been too precise, too controlled. Perhaps negotiation would be wiser. The Emperor killed 3 advisors that day. Within a month, 400 Keldari capital ships were assembled at the edge of their territory. It was the largest armada in galactic history. Each ship was a mountain of metal and weapons, crewed by warriors who had been bred for combat since birth. Together, they represented a force that had never known defeat. The Emperor himself led the fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. A vessel so large it had its own weather systems inside its cargo bays. "Today, we end the human threat forever," he broadcast to his fleet. "Today, we remind the galaxy why the Keldari rule." The armada jumped to FTL, heading straight for Earth. They emerged at the edge of the Sol system, sensors sweeping for targets, weapons charging for the slaughter to come. What they found instead was a nightmare. 3,000 human warships waited for them, arranged in perfect formation, their weapons already locked on target. The Keldari sensors could barely read them. The ships seemed to absorb light, making them almost invisible against the darkness of space. "Impossible," the Emperor whispered. "Where did they come from?" Captain Jihohan sat on the bridge of the Unbroken, watching the Keldari fleet with calm eyes. Beside him, Lieutenant Hana Choi was running final weapons checks. "They brought everything they have," Hana observed. 400 ships. Impressive. "It will not be enough," Jiho said. He opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "All ships, execute Battle Plan Alpha. Weapons free. Show them what humanity can do." The battle began. It lasted 4 hours. By the end of the first hour, 80 Keldari ships were dead, torn apart by weapons they could not track, could not dodge, could not stop. By the end of the second hour, the number had doubled. The Keldari tried to adapt. They were experienced warriors, veterans of a dozen campaigns. But nothing in their history had prepared them for this. Human ships moved faster than physics should allow. Human weapons struck from angles that made no sense. Human tactics were unpredictable, creative, almost chaotic. By the end of the 4th hour, the Grand Fleet was broken. 340 ships drifted in pieces across the void. 60 more were crippled, their engines dead, their weapons silent. Only a handful had escaped into FTL, fleeing back to Keldari space with tales that no one would believe. Earth had lost 12 ships. Captain Jiho looked at the carnage on his view screen and felt nothing. No joy, no pride, no regret. Only the cold satisfaction of duty completed. "Find the Emperor's flagship," he ordered. "I am going aboard personally." Haina's eyes widened. "Jiho, that ship still has weapons. It still has thousands of soldiers." "Then it will be a fair fight," he replied. 1 hour later, Jiho stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, his boots stepping over the bodies of Keldari warriors who had tried to stop him. Behind him, 50 human marines secured the ship, disarming survivors, treating wounded enemies with medical care that the Keldari had never offered their victims. The Emperor sat on his throne, surrounded by the bodies of his guards. He was wounded but alive, exactly as Jiho had intended. "Kill me," the Emperor growled. "I will not beg," Jiho shook his head. "We do not want you dead. We want you to deliver a message." He leaned close, his voice soft and steady. "Go home. Tell your people what happened here. Tell them that humanity offered peace, and you chose war. Tell them that war is now over. You lost." The Emperor's eyes burned with hatred. "This is not over. We will rebuild. We will return. Perhaps," Jiho agreed. "But next time you consider attacking Earth, remember this day. Remember that we could have killed you all, and we chose not to. Remember that mercy, because it will not be offered again." He turned and walked away, leaving the Emperor alive among the ruins of his ambition. While the battle raged at Seoul, Dr. Minho Baek was waging a different kind of war. For months, he had been working in secret, contacting species that had been bullied by the Council, oppressed by the Keldari, exploited by the Velith. "We are not your conquerors," he told them. "We are not here to replace one tyranny with another. We offer alliance. True alliance. Partnership between equals." 5 species that had voted against Earth under pressure now defected, providing intelligence, resources, and safe harbor for human operations. 3 more declared neutrality, refusing to support either side. The Council's coalition was crumbling. On 12 Keldari colony worlds, slave populations rose up against their masters. They had been waiting for this moment for generations, praying for someone to give them a chance. Human special forces were already on the ground, providing weapons, training, and hope. The Velith Dominion received one final ultimatum from Admiral Unipark: withdraw from the Council, declare neutrality, release all human prisoners. You have 24 hours. They complied in 6. General Taeho Shin stood before the United Council of Nations once again, his face grim but proud. "The Keldari Empire is broken," he reported. "The Velith Dominion has surrendered. Our allies are growing stronger every day. But we must not lose sight of who we are." He paused. "We are not conquerors. We are not tyrants. Every species we liberate will choose their own future. Every world we protect will govern itself. We fight for freedom, not empire. If we forget that, we become everything we despise." The Council nodded in agreement. "Then we continue," Taeho said. "Until every chain is broken, until every cage is empty, until the galaxy understands that humanity will never accept a universe built on oppression." The war was not over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity was rising, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them. 1 year after the vote that was supposed to cage humanity forever, Admiral Unipark walked into the Galactic Council chamber on Valora Prime. The room was half empty now. Of the 12 species that had once ruled the galaxy, only 4 remained in the weakened Concord. The Keldari Empire had shattered into 7 independent states, most of them now allied with Earth. The Velith Dominion had dissolved completely, its ruling class overthrown by its own worker caste in a revolution that human advisors had quietly supported. The great seats of stone and metal, once filled with arrogant beings who controlled the fates of trillions, now sat vacant and gathering dust. Yuna wore the same uniform she had worn a year ago. Her face showed the same calm expression. But everything else had changed. Behind her walked General Taeho Shin, Engineer Sujin Lim, and Captain Jiho Han. They represented the military, the technology, and the future of humanity. Together, they stood before the remnants of a power structure that had once seemed eternal. The High Speaker, the crystal being who had announced Earth's containment, looked down at them with something that might have been fear. "Admiral Park," it said, its voice less steady than before. "You requested this assembly. The remaining members of the Galactic Concord are present. What do you wish to say?" 7. Yuna let the silence stretch, just as she had 1 year ago. But this time, the silence meant something different. This time, everyone in the room knew who held the power. 1 year ago. She began. "This council voted to cage my species. You called us dangerous. You called us a threat. You said that humanity could not be trusted with a seat at your table." She paused. "You were right." Murmurs rippled through the remaining delegates. This was not what they expected. "Humanity is dangerous," Yuna continued. "We are dangerous because we do not accept limits. We are dangerous because we refuse to be small. We are dangerous because when someone tries to put chains on us, we do not adapt to the chains. We break them." She stepped forward, her voice growing stronger. "But you were wrong about what we would do with that danger. You feared we would conquer. You feared we would enslave. You feared we would become what you yourselves had been for 400 years. Her eyes swept across the assembled delegates. "We have conquered nothing. Every world we have touched is free. Every species we have helped now governs itself. The Keldari slaves are slaves no more. The Velith workers are workers no more. Throughout the galaxy, beings who lived in fear now live in hope." General Taeho stepped forward beside her. "This is not the end of something," he said. "This is the beginning. Humanity is not here to replace one empire with another. We are here to offer something the galaxy has never known. True partnership. True equality. A union of free peoples who help each other not because of fear, but because it is right." Engineer Sujin activated a holographic display. It showed a map of the galaxy, with hundreds of worlds highlighted in blue. "The new Galactic Alliance," she explained. 47 species have already joined. Trade agreements, mutual defense, shared technology, open borders. No contained species. No hierarchies of worthiness. Every member has an equal voice, regardless of size or power. The High Speaker's crystal form flickered with what might have been uncertainty. "And what of those who do not join?" it asked. Yuna answered. "They are free to remain apart. We will not force anyone to join us. But we will also not allow anyone to oppress others. The old way, where strong species treated weak species as property, is over. Any who try to return to those ways will find us waiting." The chamber fell silent. The remaining council members looked at each other, searching for guidance that none of them could provide. For 400 years, they had been the rulers of known space. Now they were being asked to become equals among those they had once dismissed as inferior. Finally, the High Speaker spoke. "The remaining members of the Galactic Concord accept the terms of the Galactic Alliance," it said. "We will join as equal partners." Yuna nodded. "Welcome. Together, we will build something better than what came before." The ceremony that followed was brief and simple. No grand speeches, no elaborate rituals. Just signatures on documents and handshakes between beings who had once been enemies. The old order ended not with a battle, but with a quiet acceptance of reality. Later that evening, Captain Jiho Han stood on the observation deck of the Unbroken, watching Earth rise in the viewport. The blue and green marble hung in the darkness, beautiful and fragile. The home of a species that had just changed the galaxy forever. Captain Hana Choi joined him, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She had been promoted after the Battle of Seoul, given command of her own vessel. But tonight, she was just a friend, sharing a quiet moment. "It is strange," Jiho said, accepting the coffee. "I spent my whole life preparing for war. training for battles, planning campaigns, expecting to die in combat. And now it is over. Hana stood beside him, looking at the stars. Is it over? She asked. There are still species out there we have never met. Still parts of the galaxy we have never explored. The universe is very large. Jiho smiled slightly. True. And knowing humans, we will not rest until we have seen all of it. Do you think they will ever understand? Hana asked. The other species, I mean. Do you think they will ever truly understand why we did this? Jiho was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the council chamber. About the arrogant faces that had voted to cage his people. He thought about the Keldari Emperor. Humiliated, but alive. He thought about all the beings across the galaxy who had watched humanity rise, and wondered what it meant. It does not matter if they understand, he finally said. It only matters that they remember. Hana nodded slowly. Remember what? Jiho turned to look at her, and his eyes held something ancient, something that went back through millions of years of human evolution. The fire of ancestors who had survived ice ages, predators, plagues, and their own worst impulses. Remember that we offered friendship first, he said. Remember that we asked for peace, and they gave us war. Remember that we could have destroyed them, and we chose mercy instead. He looked back at the stars, and remember that we are still here. We will always be here. Whatever the universe throws at us, humanity will survive. We will adapt. We will overcome. That is who we are. That is who we have always been. The Unbroken's engines hummed as the fleet prepared to move to its next mission. Somewhere out there, beyond the borders of known space, new worlds waited. New species. New challenges. New opportunities for humanity to prove itself once again. The galaxy had tried to contain them. The galaxy had failed. And now, the galaxy would learn to live with the consequences, not as servants, not as subjects, but as equals. In a universe where humanity had finally taken its rightful place among the stars,